Hello, and I welcome you all to the MOOCs on Introduction to Sociology 2. Today's discussion will be on feminist perspectives, and here we will try to understand the concept of feminism. To begin with, feminism refers to the belief that women and men should have equal opportunities in economic, political, and social life. The feminist perspectives focuses on the significance of gender in understanding and explaining inequalities that exist between men and women in the household, in the paid labor force, and also in the realm of politics, law, and culture. Feminist sociologists have always attempted to bring to light women's personal experiences, their problems, like their experiences in the case of domestic violence, their experiences when they are suffering from utter poverty. So it is all about women's operation. It's all about how women are being exploited in our society. This is what basically the feminism deals with. According to feminists, we live in a patriarchal society. Now, what is patriarchy? Patriarchy is a hierarchical system of power in which men possesses greater economic and social privileges than women. Therefore, that goes to say that patriarchy is the male dominance. Also, it asserts that society values masculinity more than femininity. Feminist perspectives assume that gender is socially created and reinforced through learning. So the gender role, you see, like what a woman should perform as being a woman, that is basically prescribed by the society. So it is being created. The gender roles are being socially created. Now, if we try to define feminism, we may say that feminism is a movement advocating for women's social, political, legal, and economic rights, which are equal to those of men. So, it is vouching for equality. Feminism is an interdisciplinary approach to achieve equality and equity based on gender and gender identity. So, we need an interdisciplinary, a multidisciplinary approach while we practice feminism. Feminism respects diverse experiences of women and their identities, knowledge, and strength, and finally, empower all women to realize their full rights. So, it is more of an inclusiveness. It is calling for inclusiveness. It is calling for more diverse experiences of women. Feminism is about all genders having equal rights and opportunities. That means to say that it does not, feminism is not only advocating for women's right. It is actually advocating for the rights of all the gender. So it is actually not anti-men. It is talking about equality for all the genders. Now, feminism is a broad term which refers to a perspective that recognizes and opposes patriarchy and argues for women's right. So, feminism is something which talks about no domination, domination as such, so that women are not oppressed, women are not exploited. For that matter, no one in the society is oppressed. So, it is actually calling for equal status of all and no discrimination at all. Why do we need feminism? Inequality between men and women is the most significant form of inequality, as we have already discussed. We have seen that it is the dominance of men that is causing suppression or exploitation of women in our society, which is leading to an unequal status of women. Therefore, this is because of such dominance that inequality exists in our society. And particularly women, who are considered to be the second sex of our society, are the most victimized due to this inequality. Now, gender norms are especially socially constructed, as we have already seen, and it cannot be changed. Thus, we can say that patriarchy is the main cause of gender inequality in our society, where women are subordinated because of men dominance and because of their power. So we have to break this dominance. We have to challenge patriarchy. And how do we do that? Feminism, we know, is a political movement. It exists to rectify social inequalities, although strategies of social changes vary enormously. Therefore, feminism can definitely be a very strong instrument for dismantling this power hierarchy which is existing in our society. Therefore, feminism can be a tool to break patriarchy, and this can also be possible. I mean, if we do this, if we can challenge patriarchy, if we can challenge the power hierarchy which exists in our society, then we can think of a society which is based on democracy, which is based on sharing, which is based on equality. Now, let us have let us know, or let us understand the historical background of feminism, how it has evolved and how it has developed chronologically. In the 18th and 19th century, early feminist writers began to address issues related to the political, economic, and educational status of women and women's morality. So it was only in the 18th and 19th century that feminists writers, there were women who started writing for the issues or about the issues related to the political, economic, and educational status of women. This brought awareness about existing inequalities between men and women, including legal and social restrictions and prohibitions in the society. In this way, the society started realizing, or say a part of a society started realizing, they became aware of the injustice or the inequalities which existed, and there were discriminations between men and women. So they felt that now it was time to address these inequalities. So in 1837, for the first time, Charles Fourier, a French socialist, used feminisme to describe women's liberation in a utopian future. So it was in the year 1837 that this term feminisme was used for the first time, followed by 1848. This was a kind of a historical moment, I must say. This was the Seneca Falls. It happened in Seneca Falls in New York, USA, where women like Elizabeth Clary Stanton, Lucretia Mott, they all joined together and they spoke for the first time for anti-slavery convention. And they also talked about, and this can be also taken as the nation's first women's right convention. This convention demanded for civil, social, political, and religious right for women, and this was declared in the famous Declaration of Sentiments and Resolution, 1900. Now, this was the year which is associated with women's suffrage. That is, women now demanded for their voting rights. Who doesn't know about 8th March? We all celebrate Women's Day, don't we? Now, in 1911, on 8th of March, the first International Women's Day was observed in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland, which actually talked about women's suffrage and labor rights. So that was how the 8th March, that is the International Women's Day, began. 1920. This was the year when the Egyptian community, the women of the Egyptian community, for the first time stood against female genital mutilation. 1945. Women in Ireland protested against the unhealthy working conditions and they went for strike. 1946. Soon after United Nations came into existence, Roosevelt famously read as an open letter to the women of the world, and it was urged to increase involvement in national and international affairs, and that women should come forward and talk about their problem. 1960. This is the year which is really tragic because the Mirabal sisters, they were brutally murdered in Dominican Republic on 25th November for raising awareness on ending violence against women. 1975. This year was declared as the first International Women's Year and the first International Women's Conference on Women was organized in Mexico to discuss several issues on women's rights. 1979, the CEDAW, which is Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that is CEDAW, that was declared, and it is still the most comprehensive international instrument to protect human rights of women. 1980, the World Conference of the United Nations Decade for Women. It was organized in Copenhagen to review the progress which was implemented as the goal of the first World Conference, which was held in Mexico, and it further focused on employment, health, and educational issues for women. So it was then we can understand how these chronologically how the women communities or the women folk of our world was gaining importance. Now, in 1985, next Women's Conference was held in Nairobi with the agenda to promote gender equality. In 1993, Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women to explicitly address and define forms of violence against women. So now, violence against women, this was a much talked about issue, and people wanted to end any kind of violence against women. 1995, a very important worldwide conference of women. This was the fourth World Conference on Women, which was held in Beijing, China, and it raised several issues on women's rights, and several critical challenges were posed, and too much of discussion took place on how women's rights can be ensured. 2006. We get evidences how women of Uttar Pradesh organized themselves. This is particularly an incident which took place in our nation in India. We get evidences how women of Uttar Pradesh organized themselves to form Gulabi Gang to fight against any kind of injustice which was done against them. 2013, demand for education of all, particularly for women. This was a major issue which was taken up seriously as soon as after the attack on the schoolgirl Malala Yousafzai. 2017, the very much talked about incidents, popularly known as the Me Too movement, was carried out to protest against sexual exploitation of women. So, all these issues or all these historical incidences tells us that how the women's issues were addressed. Suffrage was something to begin with. Voting right, educational right, right to employment, and subsequently other rights like women's human rights issues, where women now said that they are human beings and they should be given due respect, and they have their dignity and respect, and it is time that it should be acknowledged. Now let's discuss the principles of feminism. So to begin with, we have basically about 10 principles of feminism, which says self-awareness, self-care and caring for others, dismantling biases, inclusion, sharing power, responsible and transparent use of power, accountable collaboration, respectful feedback, courage, and zero tolerance. Self-awareness. Now, what is self-awareness? What I am, right? Now it is time that women should understand their qualities. They are not weaker section of the society, but they have lot of strength and lot of power. She has to understand and act according to her strength. So this is self-awareness. That because it so happens that women of our society, they don't even know what they can do. This is because of lack of confidence, lack of encouragement. Now, women should understand their capabilities, what they can do, and act accordingly. So, self-awareness. This is the first principle of feminism. Then self-care and caring for others. Women don't care for themselves, right? Because she is the person who is taking care of the entire household. So she hardly has time to care for herself. Now, women should start taking care of herself. She has some desires, she has some requirements, some needs. Now, she must fulfill her aspirations and care for herself. And if she cares for herself, she can automatically care for others. So, women must start thinking about themselves. So, should start caring about themselves. Should not ignore their aspirations and capabilities. Dismantling biases. Now, feminism says that it is high time that we dismantle any kind of biasness which exists or prejudice which exists in our society against the women. Inclusion. Inclusion means we have already committed error of omission. Now it is time that margins are brought to the center. We cannot exclude anybody. Everybody's opinion and viewpoint is important. So we must include the views, we must include people who were not in the center, must become the focus of our attention. So, inclusion, this is very important. Sharing of power. Sharing of power says that we don't want that power should be concentrated in one pocket. Rather, it should be disseminated within the society. Each and every member of the society, which includes men and women together, should exercise or should enjoy their power. There should be no hegemony in case of power. So, it should be shared. It should be in a horizontal way. The power should be distributed horizontally. It should not be a vertical power which is dominating in nature. So, sharing of power is what we call for. Responsible and transparent use of power. This is somehow related to the sharing of power, where we say that power should be exercised in a proper manner. We should use our power responsibly, so that we don't dominate others. So, power should be used transparently, and we should be responsible enough to use our power. Accountable collaboration. We must collaborate, we must be together, we must act as a team to achieve our goals. Then, respectful feedback. We have so many developmental activities. Our government is giving us so many, they are framing policies, policymakers are framing policies, and there's so many programs and schemes are launched. So, but how effective are these schemes and programs? These schemes for example, government or the state is framing schemes and programs for the development and empowerment of women. But how, at all, is it need-based, or does it serves the purpose of women? Are women actually getting benefited from all these schemes and programs? Therefore, we must have respectful feedback from the people, or particularly for the women who are actually, for whom these programs and schemes are being designed. Courage. Women should be courageous enough to talk about their problem. This so happens that women simply they ignore their problem because they have been taught, they have been schooled to not to talk about their problem. So now it's time that women should become courageous enough to bring about or talk about their problem, and if they talk about their problem, it will be solved. So we want women of our communities to be courageous enough and encourage them to speak about their problems and challenge any kind of discrimination. Zero tolerance. Now, this particular aspect goes to say that women should not tolerate any kind of violence or any kind of discrimination which is done against them. So these are basically the principles of feminism. Now, what are the reactions of feminism? Well, there are two reactions of feminism: the pro-feminism and the anti-feminism. So, pro-feminism, this is a concept which supports feminism without implying that the supporter is a member of the feminist movement. The term is most often used in reference to men who are actively supportive of feminism. Well, can you think of at least two names from our Indian, social reform movements who were feminist? Yes, we can think of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. They were the ones who were feminist in true sense. They wanted women to be liberated. They wanted women to come forward and have their rights, enjoy their rights. Another group that we can talk about is the anti-feminism. Now, anti-feminism or the anti-feminists, they opposed feminism. They oppose feminism. So, anti-feminism is opposing to feminism in some or all of its form. In the 19th century, anti-feminism was mainly focused on opposition to women's suffrage or birth control. So, there were a group of people who did not want women to enjoy their rights, particularly their voting right or their right to their right to have sexual or reproductive rights. So people opposed it. Perhaps they had some vested interests. That's the reason that they did not want women to enjoy their right, or women to come out of the four wall and take or participate in the public in the public sphere, or be a part of the public sphere. So, pro-feminism are the ones who support feminism, while anti-feminism or anti-feminist attitude is basically it is opposing feminism. Okay, in all form of in all of its form. So this was about feminist ideologies and some feminist concepts. Now let us see what some feminists had to say all about. Now first, to begin with, we have Shirley Chisholm. She was of the idea that the emotional, sexual and psychological stereotyping of females begins when the doctor says it's a girl. So when a girl is born in a family, the family is not much happy about it because they wanted a boy. So when the doctor says that it is a girl, they are morally down. They are emotionally, psychologically, they are down. So this is what is the stereotypical emotion or notion of our society. According to Andrea Dworkin, feminism is hated because women are hated. Anti-feminism is a direct expression of misogyny. It is the political defense of women hating. At last, this year, it is this is according to Cecile Richards. She says, this year, women learned that if we aren't at all in the table, we are on the menu. So, these are some of the notions of the feminists. So, to conclude, we can say that now it is time that the global community or the international community get together to strive for a world where women have their own voice, they have their choices, and they are agentative to vouch for their rights and protest against all kinds of discrimination and injustice done to them. Women must now realize their strength and capabilities and accordingly try to develop themselves and go for empowerment. And empowerment does not only mean educational or political or socio-economic empowerment. It is a holistic term. So when we call for empowerment, we want that women should be empowered in all the sphere, that is economic, political, educational, social, cultural, legal. So feminism, this is the tool which can actually lead to such empowerment, and this is the tool which can actually dismantle patriarchy and make this entire global community, or say the entire world, a better place to live for both men and women together.